What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another round of Questioning Constructs. I am one of your co hosts here. I'm John.
And I'm Rebecca, the other co host. Welcome back.
I feel like hosting co host might be a little cold. Like, it's such a weird
Hosting.
way to refer to you. It's parasitic. It's a host. Or, excuse me. Well, I guess the podcast is the host, right? And we're the parasites on it. I don't know. Weird thought.
It could
Just
be,
run with that, people.
but it
But
could be a symbiotic relationship, mutually beneficial.
I mean, technically it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we do well, Riverside makes a little shot,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or
And gets
because
advertised.
yeah,
Yeah.
right? Like that makes sense. Maybe it's not parasitism. Is that a word? I don't know that
Maybe.
parasit. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, you've got something that you want to talk about. What's
Yeah.
up?
So I have quite a few thoughts, but I think it'd be fun to discuss the idea of thoughts. So I have two questions around thoughts and then one super random. We'll see if we even get to it. But I was thinking yesterday, do you feel your thoughts before they're actually words in your head? So I know some people don't have the actual voice inside your head. I forget what that's called, but I'm not talking about that because I think we've confirmed before that we both have that inner monologue, that inner voice. But before the inner voice gives you the thought, do you actually feel it inside your head?
Very, very. Oh, actually, now that I'm thinking about the question, no, I can't say that I think the thought. I can, like, as I'm sitting here thinking the thoughts, it's such a weird thing. What have you done?
Because
Um,
the reason why I wondered about this, if maybe people are different in that way too, there's many times where before the words actually form in my head, it's like the maybe the closest for people would be like the aha moment where you're like, ah, and it just feels like the idea strikes you. But I have that more than just the aha moments. Like sometimes I can feel the thought coming through, but the words aren't there yet.
I think that is super relatable. I feel like
Mm.
everybody's gone through a situation where they're like, wait a second, I'm thinking of something. I
Mm.
want to say X, Y, or Z.
Mhm.
I definitely think that happens. When you say feel the thought, I don't know that I understand what you mean by that. So when you say feel the thought, you're not talking about like a physical sensation. You're
Sometimes.
talking, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Not all the time, but sometimes it just feels like something is almost like a bubble. Wow, I've never tried to explain this before, but
That's
it's almost
so
like
weird.
a bubble that's like going forward and
So
it grows bigger and then like the words come forth.
you really have Jimmy Neutron brain blast then.
Oh my god.
That's wild.
I didn't think
That's
about that.
wild.
But
Um
yeah, it just if people some people don't have the inner voice in their head, which I only found out about that. I was what, probably in my mid 20s when I found out that not everyone has an inner dialogue, inner monologue. Then but it just made me question yesterday. I was like, I wonder if people feel their thoughts form sometimes. Uh so I don't know if that's just a me thing.
I don't know. I'm sure there are people out there who would probably say that they do, but me personally, I don't. But like I kind of feel weird in all of this because like we have had conversations about this before, right? One of
Mhm.
the things that I've talked about is the fact that while I am able to get some kind of voice in my head, it's not a consistent thing. So the words just flow out of my mouth. Like
Mhm.
I don't. The pause that you just saw was me
Mhm.
putting a filter on the words, and it's a really difficult thing for me to do. It's something that I do consciously. So when you see me slow down in
Mhm.
my speech, that's me filtering, right?
Mhm.
But for the most part, it's just one rapid stream, rapid fire thoughts from my head with no actual monologue going on telling me what to say next. It's just coming straight from the soul out. Like it is literally just a super fast trip, to the point where I don't necessarily know what's going to come next, which
Mhm.
is crazy for me to think about because I'm able to follow what I would consider logical paths or logical strains of thought,
Mhm.
even though I don't have a thing in there piecing it together,
Mm.
that I can point to, right? Like something obviously is piecing it together. Like my brain is recalling on something,
Mhm.
right? It's putting these complicated thoughts together in a really formidable way, but I wouldn't be able to sit. I don't have any presence to see it happen, feel it happen, or acknowledge it happening.
Hmm.
The only thing I can do is forcefully slow down what I have to say in order to then filter through it.
That's interesting. I think I can relate on most of what you're saying. It when I'm talking, I don't think I have my inner monologue telling me what to say.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just uh there are times where I kind of let my brain take over a little bit more and I can just kind of keep talking. Um but I think yeah, I don't think my inner monologue unless it's like warning me that maybe the situation like I'm misreading the situation, then I think I'll get like kind of like a like I don't know, like maybe we should slow down, but when it comes to like thinking through thought processes, I have both ways as well, where sometimes I'm like having a discussion with myself and evaluating information that's in my head. And then other times I'm just like looking at the information, dissecting patterns, and then deciding what to do with it. Yeah, I guess I never really thought about when the voice comes out, but a lot of times it's around decision making.
Um, I think that makes sense. That I can
Mm.
super relate to because, like, I mean, you want to know when I hear the voice the most?
Hmm.
It's going to be in the shower.
Oh, okay.
100%. Like, it's the God, I really am depressed because the first thing that came to my mind personally, don't judge me too hard, but the first set of words that came to my mind that I filtered just now was "It's the voice that mocks me." That's literally the first thought, and I had to stop myself from saying it because I realized how ugly that would sound without any pretext.
To that point though, actually that would be a fascinating road to go down because um I think our at least my inner voice, it sounds like maybe yours too, takes on like different almost like character personas based on what's going on. I've worked really hard to uh turn around. I call it the inner critic or my critical voice because it used to be so loud and detrimental. And I'm very proud of it. Like I've done a lot of work in that arena, but I am curious if there's anyone out there that has like, I don't know, different characters that you assign to your voice or inner voice, or if you do have different inner voices, is that also a subset of the population? Like, sure, maybe they're differentiating between who has the voice and who doesn't, but
So
for people who have the voice.
you think there's like a lesser version of like multiple personality disorder that we all kind of like we're on a spectrum of? Is that what you're kind of thinking?
Yeah.
Like,
Actually that goes into one of my broader theories. So for anyone who doesn't know, I have part of my background is in psychology and clinical mental health. I do not claim to be an expert by any means. But I have extensively studied into some of these areas. One of my thoughts that I would be very curious in the next 10 to 15 years to see what occurs of this is, I wonder if you see a lot of kids and people getting diagnosed with ADD, or like it used to be ADD and ADHD. And um, I honestly think that it's not so much maybe a high percentage of people that are newly getting diagnosed. I think what we're going to find potentially over time is that this was a normalcy across the population to begin with, and that we're all like most things are on a sliding scale. I just don't think we're quite there yet with how we understand the brain and the technology that we're using with the brain and or like with the body and in that field, because you have to think about it too. All most stuff is more relatively recent, like within like the 80s onwards. Mental health wasn't a huge thing in the 90s. It was just starting to kind of become what it is today.
Yeah, I
Same
mean,
thing. Yeah.
isn't there are already some disorders that have like that
A scale.
had names to them like 5 years ago
Mm-hmm.
that we technically say we don't address them by said name anymore. It
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like falls into a broader umbrella. So like I want to say that this is true with autism.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are different forms of autism that we had descriptive terms for, but then upon further research, I guess they decided to fold that into the broader term of autism.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's truth to that. I mean, I don't know. I'm always the guy who's like everything is on a sliding scale. Everything there's very little that we can point to. I think in reality that we can say is true,
Mm-hmm.
which may be an inflammatory statement. I don't know, but I think I don't believe that there are many things that we can say are true. I think that we can only speak to perspective and socialized norms and ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so I think everything is kind of whether we like it or not on a scale.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
which I
I,
don't even know that that's helpful, but yeah.
I feel like it is. Because I think a lot of times we're overly harsh with ourselves too. It is or it isn't, winners versus losers, and I do think
Like
how you're using the scale matters too. Like for example, and why I think both are relevant. The DSM-5 is the manual in which diagnoses are made from. So it's the whole body that has any type of condition, or it'll give you the criteria in which you're evaluating to actually diagnose somebody. It's the Bible for the clinical mental health and psychology world. The interesting thing though is that most studies are done with male participants, and most of the information that we have in that manual is based on male symptoms, but it's applied for everybody. And I hope that I don't know the specifics around how that's changed over the years with more females doing studies, or um, the information being looked at, because just recently it went from DSM-4 to DSM-5, pretty sure. um, so I think that's going to be interesting too. Like I think, actually, let me amend my earlier statement. I think it is more important how you evaluate yourself given the information that you have, whether it's on a scale or whether it's a black and white, this or that, because the how the scale is created, or how the black and white comparison is created, that matters too. And you like take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I fall is, a healthy amount of skepticism with just with most of what we see in the world. A healthy amount, right? It's not a, I don't think it's necessarily okay to be a skeptic,
Mm,
but having a grain of skepticism in how you perceive the world, I think, is important. I think rarely do we actually come across binaries.
mm-hmm,
I think it's just, again, perspective. Like oftentimes we can only see things in a certain number of ways, but I think there's a lot that goes into how we engineer the thoughts around whatever situation we're facing or thinking about, which is not really anything new. Like I don't think I'm saying anything like super valuable when I say that, because I mean, there's conversations of nature versus nurture all the time, but we all acknowledge, that we are creatures of habit, and that like our living environment will have an effect on, how we function, right? So like, just because you feel like something is a binary, um, doesn't necessarily make it so. More often than not, it's just how you grew up viewing an environment that like leads you to feeling that way.
mm.
I don't know. There's just more opportunity out there in the world than we really think. My question here is going to be, can you control the volume in your head?
Okay,
Can you
let me.
scream at yourself in your head?
Yes.
You can?
Yeah. But let me tell you, and I've found a video or two of other people that have this problem, but it's not something. I guess I'm not really going around asking people about their thoughts or what they sound like or feel like. But there are times where I will literally have music playing in my head while I'm doing things, while I can talk to that inner voice. And it's like I have to physically visualize turning off the music for it to stop. And sometimes that doesn't even happen. I've woken up some nights with music still playing, and it's like the entire night it was playing and I'm exhausted. I don't know what that says,
That's
but
weird.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't
tell me
know.
about it.
That's a wild one.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I can. There used to be a point in time where I was like super commanding over that feature, I guess. And I feel like I've lost it over the ages. So
Wow.
yeah, I used to be able to have like music playing in my head, but nowadays, I think like most people, well, who knows if it's most people? I don't even know. But I really remember the earworms, right? And like even then, it's not even like a full song. It's just the part that has my ear. So like the main melody or the the catchiest part of it. Yeah, and that'll loop like, but it's not as if I have music playing in my head anymore. Yeah, not like the good old days of, yeah. I
That's
don't even
so
know.
interesting. Because for me, I wish that, like, if it didn't occur, I'd be okay. And I have a hard time turning it off. And sometimes it's like, I just want to sleep.
Yeah,
So the
that's
other thing
super weird.
that's what I'm saying. I don't know why. And sometimes I will feel like it will be an entire song, but the parts that come through the loudest are, like you said, like the melodies or that specific piece that got caught in your head. But yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, just yeah. But
So
interesting that you can control the volume in your head. Like I feel like that's kind of interesting. Like, can you make your ears or your eardrums shake? Is I think that's what it
no,
is.
but I did know a guy who could make two people actually that could make their eyeballs vibrate.
Oh, I can't do that, but I've
That
I've seen people do that. Yeah.
yeah. it's wild when you meet someone that can do that. But the ears, no.
I can make my like I can make the thunder sound in my ears. But what's
What?
interesting, yeah. So like when you do the ear shaking thing, it like creates like this thunder
Oh,
sound.
okay. Yeah, I can do that.
I
If
think you're literally vibrating your inner. I think that's what it is. I could be wrong,
I've
but
never thought about now see, I can't
yeah.
I just tried it and I can still do it, but I can't do it as well as I used to when I was a kid. But I never considered that I was vibrating my eardrums.
I
My
think I could be super freaking wrong about this. I don't know. But yeah, I can make that happen. What's interesting is that it also will coincide a little bit, like it starts to rumble when I
Mhm.
try to raise the volume of the inner voice, or the yeah. If I try to like scream in my head, like yeah, it'll start to shake there. And I wonder if that's
That's
just an internal pressure that I'm pushing on it, which is causing things to like,
it
yeah,
could be or just the way that yeah, could be that, could be energy, could be like just the way your body is cuz like that doesn't happen to me. Like when I'm like if my inner voice is screaming or getting louder or whatever, I don't usually have anything else that happens with that.
yeah.
I don't think so.
I will say, yeah, maybe it's just when
Interesting.
I'm like, maybe it's when I'm putting intention into it, because like I will say I don't really feel like I have those moments. Like I'm making it happen now, but I don't feel like that's an experience that I have like when I'm in the shower thinking to myself. And there are
Mhm.
definitely times where I've had like the inner thought, or like in the car. I often get like, again, please, I'm depressed, but I'm not like terrible. I've got things to be sad about that, to me, they're worth being sad about. But um like in the car, like I will, I don't want to say often because I don't like the picture it paints, but I will feel the need to just scream, to yell,
Mhm.
and like my inner voice will be yelling in those moments. And sometimes it's a question of, will I join it or not? And it just depends on like the situation, or I guess overarching feelings throughout the day. Sometimes I give into that pressure and I may yell in the car. And this could be with like nothing else happening. It like is this feeling that builds up.
Mm.
But yeah.
I have a question for you around that. So, if we wanna dive into this, because I have a lot of I wouldn't say as many, but I have had quite a few of those moments where, like, the inner voice screams, and I think for me, it was being in a lot of situations where I couldn't I couldn't fully express myself or my expressed self was not accepted, just, like, growing up and, all of that. But I'm curious how it is for you also, like, physically, because when that happens, when I get to moments where I want to scream, uh, one of the tactics that I started deploying after I had gotten into somatic therapy was I was like, "You know what? I don't ever" like, I thought about it and I'm like, "I haven't screamed since I was probably, like, I don't know, like, a young adult, you know, teenager, whatever, like, really truly just, like, let it out." And so I told myself, I was like, "Well, what if I, like, started doing that?" And so all I wanted to do though, like, I feel so it'll be like the inner voice wants to scream, but I know it's coming from a place of, like, deep grief. And so I'll just be sad and I'm like, I don't feel like screaming." So what I would start doing is I was like, "Okay, but you gotta at least, like, give a small scream, get a tiny scream." And so I would sit in the car, I'd be driving, and I'd be like, like, I would sound like I was dying. But it did help a little bit. However, I'm curious, like, for me, it's like intense sadness or sorrow, and I've gone through quite a few things in my life that I think have led me to that point. But is that what it feels like for you? Like, do you just feel pure anger, or do you feel like intense sadness, or do you feel something
Um,
else that causes you to want to scream, or we don't know?
I tend to be emotional, sadly. I have to fight against emotion a lot of the time, right? Like so I've kind of built up like an ability to overanalyze in order to deal with the intense emotion that I may have or go through.
Mm,
So a lot of times it is just like intense emotion. Like
mm,
it could be good, it could be bad, it could be sad, it could be excited. Like, but it's usually some kind of intense emotion. A lot of times it'll follow music. So
mm.
like if I'm, if a certain Linkin Park song comes on,
Yeah.
like I might I might scream to the end of Bleed It Out. Like I,
Yep.
I may do that, right?
Mhm.
Like of course this is me just alone in the car, so but like I wouldn't do it with other people. But yeah, it's and I can't modulate it like that. Like I can't get myself to do like the small, like it's guttural, and it's a lot of times I don't have the voice to do it. So like I overstretch
Oh, yeah.
like my I don't even know if it's like my vocal cords that you stretch. I don't know
Uh-huh.
how that works. Um but a lot of times I'll stretch that to the point where what ends up coming out is like it starts off with my voice and ends up in like this rasp,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I just don't have the range to vocalize all the
Mhm.
feelings. I
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
overextend, and almost every time I end up coughing, like because I really let it all out. So it's
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a strange one. Yeah.
So it sounds like yours is more like like an your nervous system is overridden and you just need a release. And I just think that's so interesting because for mine's overridden, but in a different way. It's like suppressed. And so like just the act of like trying to force out a yell is like, we don't want to do that. We're heavy, we're sad, we're and so I'm like, no, but please help me. I have all
For
this sadness.
It's really interesting that you put it that way, because for me it absolutely is. Okay, we're gonna
Yeah.
yell. We're gonna do it. We're gonna
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And then just letting it all out, and then being sad that I don't have the voice to express myself.
I have a
Like,
crazy question though. Do you want to scream and shout, John,
no.
and let it all out?
Nope, not at all. Okay. Keep all that ish down.
But
Keep it all in.
with
I
all
need
the
I need to be a
conversation,
man, and I need to not express emotions nearly as much as I do. Stoicism is the way to go, people. That's the true answer. To be a man is to be stoic.
oh please.
I Listen. I
But
will say I do wish that I had a little bit more stoicism in my life. If I really wish I had the ability, or I really wish I actively worked on the ability to be a little more stoic. So there is like a little seed
mm,
of truth in there. But
mm,
yeah. Anyway,
yeah, no, I think that's fair call out. Um, I do think it's interesting for as many conversations as we had, and we've gone like really in depth. Like we're still talking about this sort of stuff, and we learned something new. Lincoln Park, 100% agree. You can't listen to that without getting emotional. But also, I because I feel things pretty deeply, I have to be very conscious of music that I take in. And there's a lot of times, like more often than not, I'm doing car rides with no music because it's like I'm already I wouldn't even say that I'm overwhelmed or the day is bad or anything, but I feel things pretty deeply. So even if I'm having the best day, the minute I turn on a song, it's like boop, emotions turned. And I don't think that's something that we consciously think of quite often. And I know for a lot of people, music is therapy. For me, no, not so much. I think it like I'm too sensitive to emotions and I get way too into the music way too quickly. Um and so it does the opposite for me. It's almost like dysregulating.
That is interesting. But I think it's interesting to me because of my inability to like how do I put it? I don't really think I have full understanding or thought behind everything I'm saying, so some of it is probably going to be wrong, or it may not be like a cohesive thought. Uh, the music is something that I can filter through, and my emotions are pretty resolute through what I listen to. So
Really?
it's not super often that a song will pull or push me somewhere. It has the ability to, and sometimes I have to let it, right?
Uh-huh.
Or I can, choose not to, but like it's more of a choice and not something that just happens underneath the mechanisms by which I decide to stay on the song. Like I think a big thing for me is a lot of times when I'm in the car, if I'm listening to music, because there are a lot of car rides where I don't listen to music at all, which I think it's 50-50. Sometimes I'm listening,
Uh-huh.
sometimes I'm not. Um, Sometimes it's just my thoughts, which is what it is. And then sometimes I put music on to not to not really think but be in the song. But
Mm-hmm.
like because my emotions are pretty strong, I would say. Um, I have a tough time landing on a song. So you'll often hear
Mm,
me change songs until I find the one,
mm-hmm.
right? And I have to find something that is at least, at a minimum, okay with the mood that I'm in. But it's not often that I play something that will oftentimes change my mood. It's just things that will enhance or what's the opposite of enhance? Um,
Not diminish, but
Actually, I think diminish is a great a great word for that.
mm,
It'll either enhance or diminish my feelings, but it will not change the mood. Yeah.
that's so interesting. So what happened I think it'd be interesting to I can kind of see where you're going with that, but maybe a visual picture would be helpful for mine and maybe we compare. But so for me, uh the more change in the song, the more I change. So like what happens usually, and this is why I love classical music, really do, but it can I think maybe I'm just way more censoratory in some ways because what happens no matter what song it is, song starts and it feels like I don't know, like internally, like if your internal person had like a was like a blob or like an energy, now it's being kind of moving along with the song, like whatever the melody is. If it's high, you go high. If it's low, you go low. Kind of some. It kind of feels similar to what I think most people experience when you're next to bass or when you're at a concert and you hear the beat coming through the speakers. That's what it feels like, but almost all the time with all songs internally for me. And so my inside feels like it's kind of bumping around with like the melody. And so that's why it feels super
That's
disoriented
that's
because
really interesting.
uh it does one of two things. So either I'm like bouncing around with whatever, like you know how when they used to have those sound mixers, when it would visualize like a water droplet or the
Sure.
waves of sound.
Yeah, the visualizations. Yeah.
Yeah, that's literally what it feels like inside my body when music is playing. And so it's either that, or if I'm the only time that this happens where it doesn't happen quite like that is if I'm like really really depressed or like really feeling weighted down, then it almost is like doing that on the outside of my body and it feels very irritating.
So something I found interesting about what you said. First, I'm going to say that's so crazy because, like, for me, I can outright ignore songs, and oftentimes,
Yes.
I will, I will legitimately listen to a song and then ignore it for the thoughts that I have. Ignore whatever next song comes up next,
Uh-huh.
and get caught up in my thoughts to the point where I'll be at the end of the song and realize I didn't listen to any of it. And sometimes I may even go back to listen to the song that just played, even though like I had ignored it or put it outside of
Yeah.
my head. But that aside, what also strikes me is that you visualized like these emotions, or like your follow through of your emotions to the music as like a blob that
Mhm.
or like a visualizer that
Yeah.
kind of bends to it. For
Mhm.
me, the visualization that comes up is a tree. I feel like a stick, and so all music is wind, and so
Wow.
I may flow with it, and I may,
Uh-huh.
bend slightly, but it doesn't have the ability to uproot me, or uproot my emotions, I
Mhm.
should say,
Mm.
right? Which could or could not be a good thing. I have no really good understanding of that. But like, yeah, it doesn't, like, the most that could happen is I might sway to one side as the wind blows past.
That's wild.
Um, but that's kind of it. And so when I'm listening to music that makes me want to yell, right?
Mhm.
First, I have to be in that mode. There are plenty of times I've listened to Linkin Park and not yelled.
Mm.
Plenty, right?
Mm.
But if I am in the mode, that feeling, right, and I am amenable to the direction of that wind, then it's not just a wind, it's a current of air. It's something that can build into a storm of energy. And then what starts as me, just singing, then turns into me screaming, right? It is
Ah.
it's the building storm. But like for me, the visualization that comes to mind is a tree in the ground and weather around me.
That see, that's so helpful to me because I mean, most people listen to music a lot in the car, when they're with their friends, going out, like music is everywhere. But I think your visualization really helped me to understand like how my body just might be different because the only time I'm able to do what you were saying about how like you get in your heads, you don't even listen to the music or like it's not uprooting you, my focus cannot be anywhere on the music. And that's like really hard. Like I do think I have um some form of like ADHD, but like the hyper focus cuz when I'm attuned to something, it's just like it's really hard for me to get out of that. And so I'm wondering if that's part of it too because like I could be the music could be in a totally different part of the house and I can't really even hear the lyrics and a lot of my focus will go to that music and be like really disoriented or jarred by it. So,
Um, One of the things that I will say though is, I talk a good game. I say
mm,
again because I said this before I was on the podcast, but I talk a good game. But there is something to be said about music that is moving, because if is moving, right, I do have the ability to bend with it, right. So it's not
mm,
an automatic thing.
mhm.
It's something that, um, man, do I have control over it? I feel like I do, but is that really true? I feel like I have control over it, but if I here's something that makes me recall a thought or a feeling, then I'm far more amenable to it. And that's when the storm builds up. More often than not, I'm already feeling a thing and I'm using music almost as a validator.
Mhm.
No, I wouldn't even say that because it's not a conscious thing. I'm using music as a background noise that can kind of pick up the wind around me. Um, yeah, oh, it's so weird to like think about this and try and like make sense of it.
It's kind of
Um,
interesting the question you pose, like, is it a conscious choice or not? Because e even our conscious choice to choose music sometimes I think is subconsciously influenced. Like, we'll just recognize things, like,
yeah, so
super
that might
quick.
be it. That might be like where I'm having trouble distinguishing what is control
Uh-huh.
and what isn't,
Yeah.
right? Because of how quick that interchange happens.
Yeah.
So it kind of is a little confusing in that sense on like how much of it do you attribute to consciousness and how much of
Mhm.
it do you attribute to emotion, right?
Mhm.
And you know, yeah, that's a really, I think it's an interesting question.
Mhm.
But also, I wonder if this also plays into like the types of music. Like, I wonder if there's any kind of extraction we can do or extrapolation we can do based on the visualizations that we give for how we feel within music
Mhm.
to the types of music that we like. Like as an example,
Hmm.
one of the things that I really, really, really enjoy is drum and bass. Drum and bass music is some of my favorite freaking music, and a big part of that is because the consistent beat, and because of how much of it scratches my head, but
Hmm.
like also like tunes me in because it's such a consistent beat and a consistent through line. It's almost like all the weather around me calms down, and so it provides a focus point rather than weather around me, and maybe that's why I like it, because it doesn't provide a sway, it provides control. um and maybe there's something to that.
Well, and I think this goes back to how music affects us too, because the only time when we're not talking about like meditative music, right? Like in like traditional music that you would listen to, like whether that's like dance or, whatever music genre. The only time that I have felt internally calm with music is specific drum beats. If I'm at a concert and the bass is passing through me, my body just goes like it can breathe. And but only like specific types of beats do that. Otherwise, they're very jarring. Like for example, and I was thinking about this when we were talking about music because um when I did my one Reiki session, at one point she used like a little drum. Like, I'm sure you've seen them. It's like small drum like this and has like two little cords, and like
Yep.
when you twist it, like the balls
Yeah.
hit on either side or whatever the yeah. So, and it makes a noise that way. Well, at some point she used it during the session and let me know. She's like, I'm going to go and use the drum. What happened when that occurred was I did see like a visualization of like little like water sparks coming off of it, but let's just say I didn't see that. What I felt in my body, I honestly felt like water. Like any of the little like pieces that hit, just felt so jarred. Like it just completely dissipated my energy, which is kind of the same thing that happens based on the drum beats that I hear with music. So it might just be that I'm like just super sensitive to sound. Um
Could
and
be.
most people are probably maybe more like you where they're more of like the tree and they get to choose like, do I get swayed with the wind or do I stay firm, or I can uproot myself and go wild with this music, but I don't have to. And like for me, it's way like it's not really like an emotional choice. It's more of like a sensory decision that's made for me, where my body is being sensory first and then the emotions kind of follow based on what happens.
I have a feeling that this probably isn't something that there is a norm for, and that everybody has a different interpretation of it,
Mm,
which is what leads to all the different expressions of music that we see, and all the different fans of all the different expressions, right?
mhm,
So I don't think there is like a normative behavior we can associate to it, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who hear like my idea of what it feels like and are like, what the heck, like a tree in the ground? Like that doesn't sound anything like what I feel when I feel music,
mm,
right? And I'm sure there's going to be people who don't understand the feelings of what you feel when you feel music as well, or
mhm,
not that they don't understand, but they're unable to relate in that same way. I
mhm,
don't know. I think there's so many different genres that may like I don't even know how you would phrase it, because the way I'm saying it right now almost sounds as if like the genre defines you, but that's not quite right. It's you defining the genres that you like. So I don't really
Maybe
know.
I think it could still apply with how the genres were created, like how those people were interacting with that music to create that genre and or like I like
Also,
wonder musicians. So like what do you feel and experience with music? I think that would
yeah,
be
no,
really
we should
interesting.
be posing the question out to the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially because again, I think we're interpreting it in this particular way right now because of the conversation we're having.
Mm,
But like, is it oftentimes that we are trying to drum up visuals for our the sound perspectives that we're in? Like,
mm,
is that the case all the time? Right.
right.
So like, right now we're attributing a different sense
Mhm.
to kind of make real something that can't really be seen or inherently understood person to person, I think.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but yeah, weird. Definitely an interesting thought. Like,
Mhm.
just all around, I think. Yeah, yeah, weird
It'll give
stuff.
you something else to think about on your car ride. Now you can scream with the wind through the trees.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um, go ahead.
so well, I had two other questions floating through my mind that we could have talked about today too. This one's a silly and a fun one. So I found a caterpillar outside today,
Dope.
and oh, it was so cute. I didn't get any pictures though, but it made me think because he was like crawling across the ground and he kept like trying to get somewhere, right? And he was on a leaf at some point while a late breeze was blowing, and I'm like, what do you think? Do you think caterpillars get freaked out by the wind? Think about it. Like you're on this little leaf and you're like, "Oh my god, like it's
Huh.
blowing at me." Like do you think that they know what wind is, or do you think that they're just like, "Crap, the world, it's spinning again. Oh my gosh, I have no idea where I am." The world's so big for a
I
caterpillar.
I think it's closer to the latter, but still like a pretty far step. Like, if I were to give it a confidence rating, I would probably give it a confidence rating of like maybe like 45 to 50% of the way there. Um, I feel like kind of similar to what we were talking about last conversation with like the nature and the nature of like animals, right? And like if we go to
Mhm.
pick them up, like do they feel like they're unbalanced, or
Mm.
is it something where it's in their nature to be okay with being picked up,
Mhm.
right? Like I, I think that caterpillars probably don't think,
Actually,
and
I that was gonna be the next question. Do you think caterpillars think? What do I'm gonna look that up because I'm
I I
curious.
I think there's certain things that operate according to the mechanics by which their DNA is encoded for. Is that how we properly phrase it? So like the things that we are, right? Um, people, plants, animals, etc., right? We all have DNA within us, right? Like anything that is a living being has DNA,
Mm-hmm.
right? That DNA is essentially our, I don't think it's our processing unit if I were to equate it to a computer, but it might be like the um dang, I don't know enough about computers to actually make this analogy. Um whatever the initial bit that processes the zeros and ones,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
so based,
The processor
I don't know
thing
that it is the processor, it might be. So based on how big
that
or
are the
how
memory.
complex of the, I think it might be like some type of memory. I just don't know what it's called. But based on upon how big and how complex that thing is, determines your ability within the world, right? And so I think that there's a certain level of ability that we'd like to apply to things that just aren't applicable. Like, you know, like as much as I hate to, I wonder, this might be a controversial statement. As much as I'd like to say that plants have feelings or emotions, right? More than likely, they're reacting to electrical signals in the air as well as moisture and conditions around that, right? Like, even when we're talking about plants reacting to music, more than likely, there's some kind of electrical signal that's being given off, some wavelength of sound that's being given off that they're reacting to. It's not that they feel bad when they hear, sad music, right? Like, that's my thought process, right?
Yeah.
Which I have a feeling some people are going to hate to hear.
My
But
soul
that's,
disagrees with it.
so
I don't
yeah,
disagree with the
yeah. Like,
logic, but
I also want to think the caterpillar looks up and smiles at me as
oh,
it's eating its leaf.
I did find a few thing on that, or a few things on that.
Shoot.
All right. And again, quick Google search, but I think these are just like fun little tidbits we can all learn together. And if you feel like it, explore more. So, the AI overview from a couple different articles, it looks like, uh, yes, caterpillars have brains and can learn and remember things. The first one's kind of funny to me, gave me a chuckle. Innate intelligence. All living things have an innate intelligence that tells them what to do. Learning and memory, caterpillars can learn and remember things, and adult butterflies can too. For example, scientists have trained caterpillars to dislike the smell of ethyl acetate, a chemical found in nail polish remover. And then this is something also interesting. Senses, caterpillars have simple eyes that can only differentiate light from dark. And they have tiny antennae that sense smells. They also have sound receiving hairs on their bodies. So I wonder if you yell or is their whole body just like, oh, like
Yeah,
that
they
was
probably
awkward.
do sense that. Like, same thing with the wind thing that you put out there, right? Like, is it that like the wind is going and they're thinking, oh, this crazy force, or is it like they visually can't see anything outside
Mm,
of a certain radius, so they're getting the sense of rushing wind,
uh-huh.
and more than likely, that's not a sense that they've not felt before, and
Right.
so it just is something that exists. But my guess is, like, they make a simple decision based upon the senses that they're given. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, is it the case that when it rains, a caterpillar may seek shelter under a leaf? I do believe that. Yeah,
Mm,
I do think that caterpillars are probably capable of that thought process, if you want to call it a thought process. Is
mm-hmm.
it conscious? I don't think so.
Yeah. I'd like to think that it's both, but
Me too,
yeah.
man. Are you
But
kidding me?
there was another one about that was like kind of sad but interesting, I thought, for monarch butterflies. They found that they can experience stress. So if they're by like roadway noise, their heartbeat goes up. And I was like, huh,
That
the
is kind
poor
of sad.
Yeah.
but awesome at the same time. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like the what does a butterfly heartbeat look like visualized?
I was also thinking, like, how do you measure that?
Yeah,
Like, I don't want to think how you measure that because
I
yeah.
do. Let's scream
No,
at butterflies. let's
no.
let's get let's get some like somebody in the military to scream at them like new recruits. let's let's Full
Like,
Metal
new
Jacket
rec-
butterflies.
I'm pretty sure just being handled. Like, also, how do you get a baseline for a butterfly? Think it, like, because
Hmm.
think about it. It's not like I don't know. Is there a technology we have that can see a butterfly's heartbeat as compared to like a deer or like do they give off that much of a heat sensor?
You got me. This is unknown
Hold up.
territory here.
Wait,
That
wait,
that
wait, wait.
is. How do you measure a butterfly heartbeat? That's
How do
a.
you measure a butterfly's heartbeat? We're going to learn today. Oh my God. Okay, another AI overview, but it starts out. There are several ways to measure a butterfly's heart rate. That's as far as I got. Including what? Oh, that's sad. I'm not gonna read that one. Visual
Read it. Read
observation.
it. Read it. Read it.
Uh
Read it.
Visual observation. Place the butterfly in a clear plastic bag with its wings open and abdomen exposed. Weigh down the sides of the bag to keep the butterfly still, and then place a round object under its abdomen. Gently press the butterfly's abdomen over the object and use a low power microscope to observe the heart contractions. That just is so cruel. Why are we doing this? Um,
Because
electronic
somebody asked the question: do butterflies have heartbeats?
Electronic monitoring using an infrared emitter attached to a microscope to send electric pulses from the dorsal vessel to a computer screen. Whoa. Okay. OBD motion detection. Attach a micromirror to the pupa and focus a laser diode onto it. Oh, I didn't think about like butterflies that haven't hatched before. The reflected light is then detected by a position sensitive detector. The periodic mechanical motion detected is attributed to the heart.
When does a caterpillar become a butterfly?
What is it?
You
Isn't it
you
something like
said you said
12
a
weeks or something?
butterfly that hasn't hatched yet, and I was thinking, isn't that just a caterpillar? Um,
But
yeah.
it's called the I think it's the pupa, but then it's also something else. Well, look up stages of a butterfly. Of a butterfly. We used to have this kids book that would give you like stages of different animals. Yeah, so egg, larva, which is the caterpillar, the pupa, which is the chrysalis, and then the adult. Which it doesn't give me time stages. I'm pretty sure it's only like 12 weeks or something. Mm, here we go. Let's see if this gives me. So I guess it varies by butterfly. A
That
monarch
makes sense.
is 4 days in the egg stage to then full adult takes 180 days. I don't recognize
And
any of
it's
these other. Huh?
that's interesting. So pupa is kind of like an in between state between.
Pupa is when they're in their little like cocoon thing where they make their yeah, I guess cocoon, and then they're
So
just
from the moment they enter their cocoon, they're considered pupa. Like I wonder like how far into the process, because like what the only thing I remember about like butterflies and caterpillars is like they go into the cocoon and they basically dissolve in that goo, and they like restructure themselves.
a butterfly is considered a pu. Am I even pronouncing that right? Pupa, pupa,
I think you're
pupa.
right.
I'm pretty
Pupa.
sure it was a pupa. When it is fully grown and stopped eating and has shed its skin for the last time to form a chrysalis.
Okay, so yeah, once they enter the chrysalis, I guess they're considered pupa. Very interesting. Very interesting. But
Uh,
that said, I do think that this is a good stopping
yeah.
point here. Uh, the conversation of people. Where did we start? I don't even remember.
Can you feel your thought before it actually turns into the
And
what we associate with our thought, the words of the thought?
we got from there. Well, we
Some,
did change the question at the end, but we made it from there all the way to music and
uh-huh.
emotions in music and visual explanations of our feelings and yeah, very interesting kind of.
Don't
I'm
forget
gonna
the
I'm gonna keep
butterflies.
I'm gonna keep track of like the
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 arc.
yeah the arc of like how we got to the place we got because it's super interesting like after the fact to kind of like reconsider is like
Mhm.
why did we start here and end all the way over here like what was the trail of thought there
Mhm.
um but yeah super interesting so
So, what are our questions? I think my question is, I mean, I know we asked a lot of questions in this one. We asked ones for music. I want to know, how do other people experience music? If you had to
that's
give a visualization.
that's interesting that you asked that question because my question is actually very similar
Uh-huh.
to yours. My question for the people out there is if butterflies could make music, what do you think it would sound like?
I love it. It would sound beautiful. That's what it would sound like.
Maybe it depends on what stage they're in. Because
Right?
what if they're a pupa in the cocoon? What does that sound like? Just gurgling and
Well,
disintegration noises?
think about the insects that can make their own version of music, like cicadas. I wonder what the insects that it's either too soft for us to hear or they don't make any noise think about those other insects that all the time are just like, "Oh my gosh, like you again all day long and at night now, cicada, please."
All right. Well, with everything said, think we're gonna wrap up here. Just want to give a shout out to everybody who is watching
Mhm.
and following along with us and questioning constructs. In each of these conversations, just asking questions in general. I'm always gonna harp on that. I think it's just always such a good thing to do. Keep asking questions, people. But other than that, any closing thoughts here?
No, I think we're sticking with our theme here. Dive headfirst, face down, every
That's
topic.
it. That's it. Head first, face down, every topic.
Just not on the butterflies. Let them live, please.
Unless you're putting heart monitors on them,
Stop. No, I can't believe I learned that tonight.
hold
I could
down
have
their wings with your forehead.
I could have gone my whole life without learning that and I would have been okay.
You know what? Actually, this is one of the rare occasions where I'm gonna 1000% agree on that fact. Like I
Yeah.
just 1 billion% could have gone the rest of my life and been okay, not knowing how we measure butterfly heartbeats. That is a crazy one.
Yeah.
All right,
All
keep
right.
asking questions, y'all.
Sounds good. Have a great night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.